I am called to be a healer for all humanity. I am called to be a dreamer, believe in what can be. I am called to be a maker, be an instrument of peace. I am called to be a giver of abundance I receive. I am called to be a prayer, living out the truth I seek. I am called to be everything. I am called to be. Called to be the glory here on earth, so all might see all the love and all the beauty that shines in you and me. I am the living, breathing God, and you are one in me. We are called to be.
How you doing?
If you would, please close your eyes, take in a deep breath, and feel your body relax, and listen to my word. Honey of my failures, last night as I was sleeping, I dreamt marvelous error. That I had a beehive here inside my heart, and the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from my old failures. By Antonio Machado. It seems impossible, but every humble life has cried. It is so. The sweetness of living comes to us when the very humanness we regret and try to hide. Our seeming flaws and shameful secrets are worked by time and nature into a honey all their own. Ultimately, it is where we are not perfect, where we are not perfect, we are broken and we are cracked, where the wind whistles through, that is the stuff of transformation. Like other people, many of the things I wanted to be have crumbled over time into cinders that have sparked the very next dream. And the hurtful things I never meant to say have thickened my tongue over time into a kindness I didn't think possible. And each time I failed at being what someone else needed or wanted or hoped for. Each time I failed at being what I needed or wanted or hoped for. Each failure at love has solidified into unexpected learnings. The painful shavings of one's love have become the spices of joy in the next. They say that Cupid's shafts were not landing in the heart, were ordinary arrows that wounded the innocent. Like Cupid, we try so hard, but missing, hurt those along the ways until we land squarely in the heart. And when we miss, we are wounded as much as we wound. None of this lessens the pain of our journey, but it gives me comfort that our failures are unexpected stumblings and the very human paste from which we are made sweet. Just know when everything is falling apart that you are preparing the ground of you for something right that can't yet be seen, but which in time will be tasted. And so it is. Good morning.
is love, and I rest and trust and breathe and know that in the stillness of this moment there is love, there is peace, there is love.
And so if you would, if it's comfortable for you to just close your eyes. And so how wonderful and beautiful it is this day to simply know and affirm there's one life, one infinite presence, one perfect, whole and complete, loving, joyful essence that I call God, that I call Spirit. And it is right here and right now I simply anchor myself in that awareness. That awareness of perfect wholeness, perfect love, perfect joy, perfect peace, perfect wisdom. Just allowing that essence to live, move, and have its very being right at the very center of who I am. And as I now speak my word for this service and everyone in it, I simply acknowledge that essence of perfection. That love is simply an activity that is taking place right here and right now at the very center of each person here. That the faces of God that I see and know and acknowledge are that of divine right action taking place in form. And that each heart is filled and overflowing with all of that love and that joy. And as we move forward today in the service, I simply know that Reverend Dan's talk this morning is one of divine inspiration and fun. Knowing that there are no surprises in life, that everything and everyone is here by divine appointment. Which includes our children who are being loved into their truth in this service this morning. That it begins and ends with the music this morning. That's simply divinely inspired. With all of the teams in the background that are working the audio, the visual, the setup, the takedown, you name it. Everyone here is here for a purpose. And that purpose is step forward and say yes. Yes to being bigger than you are. Being part of something bigger. And so it is with a heart filled full of gratitude and joy, I simply release all of these truths, all of this love, all of this joy into the universal mind, which simply in itself is expanding exponentially, knowing that it is the truth right here, right now. And together we sing.
So you guys want to sing? You make me want to sing. I feel like singing. It's not a comedy show, it's singing. It's just singing, Candy. Or is it a comedy show? Lucky I can't see the faces you're making. We gotta put some oil in that thing, huh? How do you feel?
Something wonderful is happening to me right now.
Yeah.
Something wonderful is happening to me right now. I accept things the way they are. I accept things the way they are not. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. Yes. Come on now. I love wastefully. I love wastefully. I give freely. I give freely. I reap abundantly. I reap abundantly. Yes. I already have everything I need. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. I know it. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. You feel it? I accept things the way they are. I accept things the way they are not. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. Yeah, I love wastefully. I love wastefully. Yes, I give freely. I give freely. I reap abundantly. I gotta have it. I already have everything I need. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. I'm gonna name right. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. Yes, it is. I accept things the way they are. I accept things the way they are not. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. Yeah, right now. I love wastefully. I love wastefully. I give freely. I give freely. I reap abundantly. I'll take things. I already have everything I need. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. Let's take it home. I know this in my mind, yeah. I feel it in my body. So it is. What you say? So it is. 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 And so it is. And so she is. Reverence.
Candy and Dave. Woo! I love music. It's okay. Well, while you're standing, if it's comfortable for you, if you would put your hand over your heart and say with me, God bless America and the rest of the world. And just turn to a neighbor and greet them and say good morning.
Please welcome our incredible friend and family, Rochelle Comps, and her handsome hubby, Steve Dobbs. I was going to say a whole thing about that she's the house whisperer, but today we're going to call her the music whisperer.
Beautiful. Good morning. Surprise guest artist behind me. This is one of my favorite songwriters from New Jersey. Lou Doty. Who knew? He's awesome. He writes truth. All right, let's go.
God's love flows through me.
so much easier. I didn't have to follow all of that. All right. So the title of my talk today is I Am Eternally Young and Spiritually Mature. There will be a price to pay for your behavior. So let us set the stage for one of the most dramatic events that ever occurred in human history. Now let us step back just a little bit to the time when Moses led the Jewish people out of Egypt in a very dramatic way. Not only did he lead the Jewish people out of Egypt, he led them out of slavery and bondage. And God promised the Jewish people freedom. God promised them a land of their own, a land that was so rich, so fertile, that God itself said it is a land that is flowing with milk and honey. And God pronounced it to be the promised land. Now, they move out of Egypt, and God puts Moses in charge of holding the Jewish people together as they go through a 40-year journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. It's important to understand that the Jewish people, as they left Egypt, it was like this. They were to grab whatever they could grab, and they were on their way out of Egypt, leaving behind them literally everything they owned. So as they traveled through the wilderness and through the desert, they had nothing. And so every single day, they relied on God for their food, for their water, for their shelter, and most of all, for their protection. Now, this journey that took 40 years, one would expect this to be a journey of thousands of miles. And yet what we know about this journey is it was approximately 62 miles. Now this journey, even in Old Testament times, it's estimated should have taken 11 days. That reminds me of when I went to I drove to Disneyland, it took me 3 days. Oh, because I just stop and eat and stop. So, I digress. Now, I will tell you, 40 years in the desert, right? Walking around. And, I'm a fun person. I don't mind going for a rigorous hike every now and then, But I'm going to tell you, by year 29, I walked over to Moses and said, Mo, give me the map. Okay? You either pull over and get some directions or give me the damn map. Okay? Because I'm done with Pee-wee's little adventure here. It's obvious you and the big cheese whiz have a lot to work out. This isn't my circus. These aren't my monkeys. For that reason, Mo, I'm out. Okay? So, but when we learn to study this story spiritually and metaphysically, what we discover is that this isn't about walking through the desert. This is about journeying through consciousness. You see, what the infinite divine mind was doing was strengthening people's faith, strengthening people's trust in the universe. The infinite was honing their thinking, developing their spiritual maturity. You see, what the infinite knew and what we know about the law, the Israelites could not enter into freedom, into the promised land, with the same consciousness that landed them in Egypt and into slavery. We must always remember we can't think one way and get something different. So, after wandering through the desert, through the wilderness, the universe working on people's consciousness. You know, I scratched this out, but I'm going to tell you anyway. What's very interesting, one of the things that the Jewish people struggled with was the need to have something outside of themselves to worship. Something that they felt they could get power from. It's called idolatry. And you say, well, Reverend Dan, that's thousands of years ago. We don't go around boiling gold and making golden calves and worshiping them. But idolatry is that idea that there is something outside of you that will give you your power. Whether it's people, whether it's an organization, whether it's a form or an image. Idolatry is that idea that your power comes from outside of you instead of recognizing that your power and everything you need to have the life that you want comes from here. And so it took 40 years for God to change that consciousness. So much so that it took 40 years, an entire generation had to make their transition. And a new generation had to be born and grown. And over time, there was a new set of ideas and beliefs and thinking and consciousness. And then, and only then, were the Jewish people able to create freedom instead of bondage. It was then and only then that they could create abundance, a land flowing with milk and honey. We know that when a person, and likewise when a group of people change their thinking, we know that the world around them, the physical world, will automatically change. We have learned that the physical world is simply an image, a mirrored image of what is happening in the interior. What is happening here will show up here. So now, we have a whole new generation. We have a whole new set of consciousness. The Israelites now are ready to move into a new way of living. And God takes a step back and decides to do a major reorg, you see. And for lack of a better way of saying it, God fires Moses. And I'm going to tell you, there's no severance package, no retirement fund, no insurance. You are fired. And by the way, you ain't going into the promised land either. And I'd be like, after 40 years, I would be pissed. And by the way, that's a whole sermon of its own that we will talk about one day. Because what transpired there, spiritually and metaphysically, is very, very powerful. So as part of the reorg, God decides he's going to put a very wise, very strong leader in charge, Joshua. And Joshua prepares to move the Israelites into the promised land, and because I believe that God too was a theater major, like myself, God decided it was going to be dramatic and swift and powerful. So Joshua gathers them up, they start to move into the promised land, and there's one thing now, apparently, that stands between the Israelites and the promised land. The Canaanites. The people that inhabit the promised land. Who, by the way, loathe the Jews. Actually stole some of their children and offered them up as sacrifices to their idols. So the Jews have a little issue with the Canaanites, you see. Now, not only are the Canaanites just mean, the Canaanites live in a city called Jericho. Russell, show a picture. Now, the interesting thing about this city, which was built thousands of years ago, it was literally one of the first structures that was built using pure military science. It's a military fortress. It's strategically placed. It's strategically built. It is strategically engineered. And what was known at that time, if you tried to pass around it, the Canaanites from this fortress would demolish you. If you could penetrate the walls, hit it straight on, the Canaanites would slaughter you from above. At this stage in human history, there were no weapons, no machinery known to humankind at that time that could destroy these walls. At their base, the walls of Jericho stood 46 feet high. We're talking a 4-story building with walls that are 6 feet deep. So here you have the Jewish people. They look up at these walls, impenetrable. And after all these years of traveling in the desert, listening to Moses, blah, 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 we get here, we get to the promised land, we see our highest and best good. We can taste our highest and best good. It's real. And yet this obstacle, these Canaanites, this Jericho, make us feel like our highest and best is further away than it's ever been before. But we are told in the Holy Bible that, again, Joshua was a very spiritual person, spent much time in contemplation and prayer. And we are told that he speaks to God about this, and he has a conversation with the God of his being. And so we read, then the Lord, now remember, metaphysically, the Lord is the law, is principle, is our idea of God. Then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the walls of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, every man straight in. So, think about what's happening here. Show them the next picture, Russell. Go back one, there we go. So basically what God is saying is, hey listen, the city's already yours. This land is already yours. And yeah, you're right. There is no possible human way that you can penetrate these walls and conquer this city. It is humanly impossible. And then God says, but I'll remind you, with God, all things are possible. And God says, I've got this. In that little paragraph, God's saying, I've got this. I know how to do this, but I need you to have your consciousness right. Because I can only do for you what I can do through you. So I need you to get your consciousness right. So what I want you to do for 6 days, I want you to circle around your obstacle. And then God says, I want you to put ahead of you the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is a wooden box covered in gold, and what lies within it are the 2 tablets that God wrote the 10 Commandments on. And the Jewish people took that with them everywhere they went. And what God's saying is, instead of staring at your problem, I want you to keep the truth in front of you. I want you to have in the forefront of your mind the truth that you know. Keep your sacred texts in front of you. And then God says, walk around these walls. Affirm the truth that you know. I want you to see these walls no longer here. See the walls coming down. Every day, stay in the silence. Every day, do your visioning work. Every day, keep the truth in front of you. Build up your confidence in the law. Build up the knowingness that what you want is here now. I want you to ignite your excitement. And I want you to foster exuberant expectation. So what would that look like? What would that look like today in modern terms, using our words, using our sacred texts? It would look something like this. Limitation and poverty are not things, but are the results of restricted ways of thinking. We are surrounded by a subjective intelligence which receives the impress of our thought and acts upon it. The law is a law of reflection, for life is a mirror reflecting to us as conditions the images of our thinking. Building up our confidence in the law. Keeping our truth in front of us. And so when Joshua would read that, all of God's people would say, Amen. The all-creative wisdom does not think one thing is difficult and another easy. With God, all things are possible. And God's people said, Amen. We live in mind, and it can return to us only what we think into it. No matter what we do, law will always obtain. If we are thinking of ourselves as poor and needy, then mind has no choice but to return what we have thought into it. It is done unto you as you believe, and all of God's people said, Amen. I affirm right here and right now that I have infinite possibility. And all God's people said, Amen. These walls are tall, but the law is taller. These walls are strong, but God is stronger. And all of God's people said, Amen. Every time we think, we are thinking into a receptive plastic substance which receives the impress of our thought. When we stop to realize how subtle thoughts are, how unconsciously we think negation, how easy it is to get down and out mentally, we shall see that each is perpetuating his own condition. This is why people go from bad to worse, or from success to greater success. And all of God's people said, Amen. These walls are pure energy. These walls have no form. They are pure energy, and what I know is that mind moves energy, and so I move these walls. And all of God's people said, Amen. I am happy, well, and filled with perfect life. I live in the spirit of truth and am conscious that the spirit of truth lives in me. My word is the law unto its manifestation, and will bring to me or cause me to be brought to its fulfillment. There is no unbelief, no doubt, no uncertainty. I know that I know that I know. Let every thought of doubt vanish from my mind, that I may know the truth, and the truth may make me free. And God's people said, Amen. Now you see, the Israelites have all the ingredients they need to manifest their good. Remember what Dr. Ken Gordon said last week. It's not just about having the right thoughts. It's just not about having the right words. It's about having the right feeling. All of what God was doing with the people for the first 6 days was generating the feelings necessary to create. And so, we get to the 7th day. And what happens on the 7th day? The Bible says, on the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So every man charged straight in, and they took the city. And as the hymn would say, and then the walls came tumbling down. Show them a pig. Can you imagine what that must have looked like? See, it is a fact that Jericho existed. It's archaeologically unimpeachable. I could never have made that up myself. I read that and had to rehearse it 70 times to be able to say it today. There is no doubt that it existed. Show them the next picture. They have uncovered what remains of Jericho. Some archaeologists will tell you that they can even show where the walls came tumbling down. But we have to remember that at that time in human history, there was no military means, there was no human beings, there was no way for the Jewish people to bring that city down, and yet we have evidence that the city was not only overtaken, but totally destroyed when they got in there, based on what archaeologists have found. So what do we learn from these words? I mean, why would the universe even make these available to us thousands of years later? Well, it's likely that some of us have a Jericho in our lives right now. Maybe one has a health challenge, an obstacle keeping us from optimal health. Maybe some of us stand and there is a wall of lack, a wall of debt. Some have a grand business deal waiting right there. Our students are getting ready to take their final exams, to go to college. The highest and best good is there, and yet there's a blockade, there's a blockage. What do we do? But whatever it is, what we learn from this is we have to move into our own spiritual maturity. And what is spiritual maturity? Spiritual maturity is not just having the knowingness of what to do, but it's the doing of the do. You know, we have that saying here that it works if you work it. Are you working it? What are you thinking? How are you reacting? What are you basing your life on? What beliefs? So we become spiritually mature and we move into the silence. We begin our visioning work. We keep the truth in front of us. And we quit staring at the problem and we start to move around it. We begin to see that it is gone. We begin to see what it is that we want. And most importantly, what are we doing to generate the right kinds of feelings? Thoughts plus words plus feelings, as Dr. Ken said, equals manifestation. And it was interesting as I thought about this. I have learned so much in this space, starting in 2004. And I have reflected back and I thought everything I've ever read in the Bible, everything Jesus ever said, everything New Thought teachers have taught me, everything that Ernest Holmes said was this: if you move into your spiritual maturity, where there seems to be no way, the law will make a way. And what seems to be impossible, God will make possible. That's the truth we stand on. And so I look forward to your texts and your emails and your voicemail messages. And all I want you to do is just hold the phone up and let me hear all the walls come tumbling down. God bless you. Have a great day.
So, being raised in Lutheran, I've heard, how many times have I heard that story? And what I saw, thank you, Reverend Dan, that was just, that's one of my favorite talks of all time. I just love that. It just bridges all things. And I saw music and vibration that ultimately did it. That's it. Just, that's what I believe music is all about. It's that vibration to break those walls down. And wow, big aha. I love all these great writers that channel this good stuff. This is Faith Rivera. She's awesome.
I'm called to be a healer for all humanity. I'm called to be a dreamer, believe in what can be. I am called to be a maker, be an instrument of peace. I am called to be a giver of abundance I receive. I am called to be a prayer, living out the truth I seek. I am called to be everything. I am called to be. Called to be the glory here on earth, so all might see all the love and all the beauty that shines in you and me. I am the living, breathing God, and you are one in me. We are called to be. You are called to be a mother, to nurture family. You are called to be a brother, be strength in times of need. You are called to be a neighbor, see a friend in all you meet. You are called to be a leader, to build community. And you are called to be a prayer, living out the truth you seek. You are called to be everything. You are called to be. Called to be the glory here on earth, so all might see all the love and all the beauty that shines in you and me. You are the living, breathing God, and you are one in me. You are called to be. We are called to be the kindness, set the broken-hearted free. We are called to be forgiveness, where pain has run too deep. We are called to be compassion, be the wind beneath each wing. We are called to make communion, only then can we succeed. And we are called to be a prayer, living out the truth we seek. We are called to be everything. We are called to be, called to be the glory here on earth, so all might see all the love and all the beauty that shines in you
Yes, please, minister prayer team, please come forward. And you see the ones that are here, we make sure that you know, if you like to just talk to them or see how they're doing, and they can see how you're doing, say a prayer for you. You can put a prayer in one of the prayer boxes. That would be a great, good thing. Thank you.
So if you'll stand and connect. And so just know with me right here and right now that there is one power in the universe for good, and I am a part of it. And so I just give thanks that this week, any appearance of an obstacle, any appearance of a blockage, those walls come tumbling down. And I give thanks that this week, each and every person moves into the silence, does their visioning, keeps the truth in front of them, affirms that what they want, they already have, and creates the energy, the enthusiasm, and the feelings of already having their good. And I give thanks knowing that as each person does that, each person experiences their highest and best. I give thanks that each person here is guided, guarded, and directed throughout their week, that each person is safe and sound. And so now I release my word into the perfect workings of the law. I know that as I have spoken, it is already done. I let go, I enjoy, and I let God. And together we say, yes, so it is. Have a great week.
Yes, there is peace on earth, and now it begins with me. Yes, there is peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our power, loved ones all are we. Now we walk with each other in perfect harmony. Yes, peace begins with me. Let this be the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Yes, there is peace on earth, and now it begins with me. Repeat after me. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. Something wonderful is happening to me right now. I know this in my mind. I know this in my mind. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my body. And so it is. And so it is. Make it a great week.